A nurse unearthed her grandfather's old whistle, hoping to bring a smile to the face of a mafia boss's deaf son. The sound it produced defied expectations and irrevocably altered the course of events. The boy could hear it, and his father was determined to understand why, refusing to let her leave until he did. The crystal chandelier in the hospital's new pediatric wing cast a web of fractured light across Alessandro Vitali's face. He stood surrounded by people whose smiles seemed too wide, their laughter too loud. He loathed these obligatory appearances, but in his world, maintaining appearances was paramount, perhaps even more crucial than blood ties. Mr. Vitali, your generosity will transform countless lives. The hospital director gushed, shaking his hand with forced enthusiasm. Alessandro's smile remained superficial, never reaching his eyes. Children deserve a chance, don't they? He said, the unspoken words hanging in the air. Even mine, who will never hear his own father's voice. 6-year-old Lucas stood beside him, his small hand gripping Alessandro's jacket. The boy's dark eyes scanned the crowd with an intensity that spoke of someone who had learned to decipher the world solely through sight. 2 bodyguards, Marco on the left and Vincent on the right, flanked them like ever-present shadows, always vigilant, always prepared. Alessandra glanced down at his son. Luca's face wore that familiar, distant expression, trapped within his silent world. The doctors had used terms like congenital sensory neural hearing loss and permanent nerve damage, fancy words that all amounted to the same devastating reality. His son would never hear a gunshot, a warning, or even the simple word run. In Alessandra's line of work, that was tantamount to a death sentence waiting to be carried out. Daddy, Luca signed, his small fingers moving with practiced precision. Tired, Alessandra nodded and signed back. Mr. Vitali, a photographer announced, rushing forward. 1 picture with your son for the hospital newsletter. Before Alessandro could refuse, Marco's phone buzzed. The bodyguard's expression turned grim as he leaned in close. Boss, we have a situation. The boy's nanny. She's not responding. Car accident on the bridge. She's fine, but she can't make it. Alessandro's jaw tightened. He had precisely 45 minutes of speeches, handshakes, and insincere gratitude to endure. He couldn't leave, couldn't afford to appear vulnerable by abandoning his own charity event. But Luca was already exhausted, overwhelmed by the crowd he couldn't hear, but whose presence he could keenly feel closing in around him. Find someone, Alessandro said quietly. Now. Mia Chun was 3 hours into her 12-hour shift when the hospital administrator appeared in the corridor, looking frantic. Mia, I need a favor. It's unusual. Mia looked up from her charts, her body aching with exhaustion. Her 12-hour shift had started right after dropping her son, Danny, at her neighbor's apartment because she couldn't afford after-school care this month. The rent was late again, and Danny's school supplies had been charged to a credit card she knew she couldn't pay off. The word no felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. What kind of favor? Mr. Vitali, the donor. His son's caretaker had an emergency. We need someone to watch the boy for an hour, maybe less. He's deaf, very well behaved. Just needs supervision in the quiet room while his father finishes the event. Mia's stomach dropped. She'd seen Alessandro Vitali from a distance. The impeccably tailored suit, the chillingly cold eyes, the men who moved around him with military precision. Everyone on staff whispered about him. Generous donor. Powerful connections. Don't ask questions. I'm not a babysitter. I know, but you're the only staff member with pediatric training available right now who isn't actively with a patient. Please, Mia. 1 hour. The administrator's eyes held a mixture of desperation and warning. Mia thought of Danny's school fees, overdue by 3 weeks, and the principal's stiff email. We understand times are difficult, but... Fine, Mia said. 1 hour. Lucas sat in the small room adjacent to the event hall, coloring with mechanical precision. Each stroke of crayon stayed meticulously within the lines. His bodyguard stood outside, visible through the glass door, their bulk blocking most of the light. Mia entered with a gentle smile, moving slowly so as not to startle him. She'd worked with deaf children before during her pediatric rotation. The key was patience and presence. She waved to catch his attention. Luca looked up, those dark eyes assessing her with unsettling intelligence for a 6-year-old. Mia signed slowly. "Hello, I'm Mia. I'm here to keep you company." Luca's eyebrows rose slightly. He signed back. "You know sign language?" "A little. I learned it in school." He studied her for a moment, then returned to his coloring. Mia sat across from him, noting his slumped shoulders and the tension in his small frame. This wasn't just a tired child. This was a lonely one. 20 minutes passed in comfortable silence. Luca drew what looked like a fortress with tiny figures inside. Mia watched, her heart aching at how meticulously he worked, as if perfection could somehow protect him. Then his crayon rolled off the table. As Mia bent to retrieve it, her hand brushed against the pocket of her scrubs. She felt the familiar shape of her grandfather's whistle, the one she'd found among his belongings after he died the previous year. She carried it like a talisman, though she'd never actually blown it. Felt too precious, too fragile. But looking at Luca's isolated expression, she made an impulsive decision. She pulled out the wooden whistle. It was small, about the length of her palm, carved with intricate swirling patterns that caught the light. The wood was dark, almost black, and smooth from years of handling. Mia held it up, miming blowing into it with exaggerated expressions, trying to make Lucas smile. He watched her with mild curiosity, nothing more. Why not? She thought. He can't hear it anyway. Mia brought the whistle to her lips and blew. The sound that emerged wasn't like any whistle she'd ever heard. It was both low and high at once, a frequency that seemed to vibrate not through the air, but through her very bones. The room's fluorescent lights flickered. The water in a nearby glass rippled, and Luca's head snapped toward her as if he'd been struck. His eyes went wide, terrifyingly wide. His mouth opened in a silent gasp. His hands flew to his ears, then dropped, trembling, to the table. "Oh my God," Mia whispered, lowering the whistle. Did you hear that?" Lucas stared at the whistle as if it were alive. Slowly, shakily, he reached toward it. The door burst open. Alessandro Vitali stood in the doorway, his face drained of color. Behind him, both bodyguards had their hands inside their jackets, on their weapons. Mia realized with horror. "What did you do?" Alessandro's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of a deadly threat. "What the hell did you just do to my son?" Luca turned to his father and signed something frantically, his small hands flying. Alessandro's expression shifted from fury to shock to something Mia couldn't quite identify. Alessandro's voice cracked. "He says he heard something. My son says he heard something." The whistle suddenly felt heavy in Mia's hand, as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. Alessandro's eyes locked onto it, then to her face. "Who are you? Who sent you?" "I'm nobody. I'm just a nurse. I was just trying to show him." Alessandro crossed the room in 3 strides. "Blow it again. Now." Mia's hands shook as she raised the whistle. She glanced at Luca, whose face held desperate hope, the first real emotion she'd seen from him. She blew. The sound filled the room again, that impossible frequency. And this time Luca didn't just react. He smiled. A pure, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Then he started to cry. Alessandro dropped to his knees and pulled his son into his arms, signing against the boy's back. "It's okay. It's okay. We're gonna figure this out." Over his son's shoulder, Alessandro's eyes found Mia's. The suspicion was still there, but now mixed with something else. Desperate, dangerous hope. "You're coming with us," he said. "It wasn't a request. And you're bringing that whistle." Mia looked at the door, where the bodyguards now fully blocked her exit. She thought of Danny waiting at home, of the bills on her counter, of her simple, struggling, safe life, a life she realized had just come to an abrupt end. The car ride to Alessandro's estate felt like being swallowed by darkness. Mia sat in the back of a black SUV, wedged between expensive leather seats, her phone clutched in her hand. She'd managed to send one text to her neighbor. "Running late. Emergency at work. Can Danny sleep over?" The response came immediately. Of course, honorable, he's already asleep. Small mercies. Luca sat across from her beside his father, still clutching a stuffed elephant. His eyes darting between Mia and the whistle she'd been told to keep visible in her hand. Alessandro hadn't spoken since they'd left the hospital. He just stared out the window, his jaw clenched, one hand resting on his son's shoulder. The silence was suffocating. They drove for 40 minutes into Connecticut's countryside, finally turning through iron gates that opened without anyone pressing a button. Security cameras tracked their movement. The house no mansion emerged from the trees like something out of a Gothic novel. Stone walls, arched windows, and enough square footage to house a small village. Inside, Alessandro said as the car stopped. Mia wanted to argue, to demand answers, to call someone. But who? The police? And say what? That a powerful man had insisted she explain a whistle? The foyer was all marble and dark wood. A chandelier hung overhead like a crystalline threat. Alessandro led them to a study lined with books that probably cost more than Mia's annual salary. He gestured to a leather chair. Sit. Mia sat. Luca was whisked away by an older woman who appeared from nowhere, signing gently to the boy. He looked back at Mia once before disappearing upstairs. Alessandro poured himself a drink, something amber in a crystal glass. He didn't offer her one. Talk, he said, turning to face her. The whistle. Where did you get it? My grandfather. He died last year. I found it in his belongings. Your grandfather's name? Chun. He was from Sicily originally. He moved to Sicily? Alessandro's eyes sharpened. What part? A small village near Palermo. Castellamare, I think. He left when he was young. Alessandro set down his glass with deliberate control. Castellamare del Golfo? Yes. Why? Does that? Do you know what that whistle is made from? Mia looked down at it. The dark wood gleaming under the lamplight. Wood. My grandfather carved things. It was his hobby. Not just wood. Alessandro moved closer, and Mia fought the urge to lean back. My son has been deaf since birth. 5 specialists, 3 countries, experimental treatments that cost more than most people make in a lifetime. Nothing worked. Nothing even came close. Then you walk into a room and blow a piece of carved wood, and he hears. I don't understand. What do you want me to? I want to know if you're working for someone. His voice dropped to something dangerous. The Morettas. The Russians. Someone who knew about my son and sent you with that whistle to get close to me. Mia's breath caught. I'm a nurse. I work 60-hour weeks to keep my son fed. I don't know any Morettas or Russians. I barely know you except that you donated a hospital wing. Your grandfather. What did he do? He was a woodworker, a carpenter. He made furniture, small carvings. He never talked much about Sicily. He left before the war. Alessandro studied her face as if he were reading a document written in a language only he understood. Finally, he pulled out his phone and made a call. Marco, I need a full background check. Mia Chun, nurse at Mercy General. Her grandfather, Chuni, originally from Castellare del Golfo. Everything by morning. He hung up without waiting for a response. You can't just investigate me. I have rights. Everyone has rights until they become a threat to my son. Alessandro's expression softened slightly. A crack in the armor. But I don't think you are. Not intentionally. He sat in the chair opposite her, suddenly looking exhausted. My wife died giving birth to Luca. Hemorrhage. The doctors chose to save the baby. When he was born silent. Didn't cry, didn't respond to sound. They said it was oxygen deprivation during delivery. My fault for choosing which one lived. His voice was hollow. I spent 6 years trying to fix what I broke. And in one night you did what I couldn't. Mia's anger softened despite herself. I didn't do anything. I don't know how that whistle. I'm going to find out. Alessandro leaned forward. And you're going to help me. I'm offering you a position temporary as Luca's caretaker. You'll bring the whistle every day. We'll document his responses. I'll pay you $20,000 a month. Mia's mind went blank. $20,000? Plus housing if you need it. Medical coverage. Whatever you require. I have a son, Danny. He's 8. Bring him. There's a school nearby, one of the best in the state. I'll cover tuition. It was too much, too fast, too good to be true. Why? Mia whispered. Why me? Alessandro's expression hardened again. Because that whistle is the only thing that's ever reached my son. And until I understand what it is and how it works, you're the most valuable person in my world. He paused. Which also makes you the most dangerous to anyone who wants to hurt me. Is this about protection or investigation? Both. Mia looked at the whistle in her palm. Her grandfather's face flashed in her memory. His gentle smile, his careful hands shaping wood. What had he known? What had he left her? 1 month, she said finally. Trial basis. And I need to explain this to Danny somehow. Alessandro nodded. Marco will drive you home tonight. Pack what you need. You start tomorrow. As if on cue, the bodyguard appeared in the doorway. Mia stood, her legs shaky. Mr. Vitali. Alessandro, he corrected. If you're going to be in my home, use my name. She nodded and followed Marco out, the whistle heavy in her pocket. Behind her, she heard Alessandro make another call. Get me everything we have on Castellardello, local legends, historical records. Everything. The door closed, and Mia realized she just made a deal with the devil. She just hoped the devil kept his promises. The audiology lab was in a building with no sign, accessed through a private elevator that required a keycard. Mia had been at Alessandro's estate for 3 days and was still discovering just how deep his resources ran. This facility doesn't officially exist, Alessandro explained as they walked down a sterile white corridor. Luca between them, holding both their hands. The doctors here work for people who need discretion. You mean criminals, Mia said before she could stop herself. Alessandro's lips twitched. I mean people who value privacy. The lead audiologist was Dr. Patel, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and gentle hands. She knelt to Luca's level, signing. Hello, brave boy. We're gonna play some games today. Is that okay? Luca nodded, though his grip on Mia's hand tightened. Over the past 3 days, something unexpected had happened. Luca had attached himself to Mia like a shadow. He waited by her door each morning, helped her make breakfast, and insisted she be present for everything. Alessandro watched this development with an expression Mia couldn't read, something between gratitude and pain. Standard tests first, Dr. Patel explained, leading them to a soundproof booth. Then we'll try with the whistle. For an hour, they ran through traditional hearing tests. Luca showed no response to any frequency, any volume. The graphs on Dr. Patel's screen remained flat as highways. She checked his ears physically, ran tympanometry tests, measured his acoustic reflexes. Structurally perfect, she muttered, frowning at her screen. His ear canals are clear, eardrums intact, ossicles functioning. This should work. But it doesn't, Alessandro said flatly. No, the hardware is fine. It's like... Dr. Patel paused, choosing her words carefully. It's like a perfect radio that isn't tuned to any station. Everything needed to receive the signal is there, but the signal itself isn't connecting. Mia pulled out the whistle. What about now? They positioned Luca back in the booth, electrodes attached to his scalp for an EEG reading. Mia stood outside the glass, the whistle feeling warm in her hand despite the cool air. She brought it to her lips and blew. The sound filled the observation room, that impossible frequency that made her teeth vibrate. Inside the booth, Luca's head turned immediately toward the speaker transmitting the sound. His eyes went wide, bright. My God! Dr. Patel whispered, staring at her monitors. Look at this. The EEG exploded with activity. Waves of neural responses cascaded across the screen in patterns Mia didn't understand but could tell were significant by the way Dr. Patel's hand shook. His auditory cortex is lighting up like Times Square. But it's not just that. Look at these areas, his sensory processing centers, his motor cortex, even his limbic system. This isn't just hearing. This is a full-body response. Alessandro leaned closer. What does that mean? It means this isn't sound processing the way we understand it. Normal sound travels through the ear, converts to electrical signals, and is processed in specific brain regions. This, she pointed at the screen, is stimulating everything at once. like his entire nervous system is receiving the frequency, not just his ears. Is that possible? Mia asked. According to everything I know. No, Dr. Patel replayed the recording, analyzing the waveform. The frequency here, it's oscillating between ranges humans shouldn't be able to hear, subsonic and ultrasonic simultaneously. It should be impossible to produce from a simple wooden whistle. Alejandro's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. Marco found something about the wood. He pulled up an email, turning the screen toward Dr. Patel and Mia. It showed a scanned document, yellowed with age, written in Italian with an English translation below. The resonance trees of Castellamare were said to grow from soil fed by volcanic springs. Local healers carved instruments from their wood, claiming they could tune the bones and reach spirits. The practice was banned by the church in 1847 as heretical. The grove was destroyed in 1923. Destroyed, Mia repeated. But my grandfather's whistle is at least 70 years old based on the wear. Which means either the grove wasn't completely destroyed, or someone preserved the wood. Alessandro finished. Dr. Patel removed the electrodes from Luca, who immediately ran to Mia, signing again. Please. Mia looked at Alessandro, who nodded. She blew the whistle once more. This time, Luca didn't just react. He closed his eyes and swayed slightly, as if he were feeling music in his entire body. When Mia stopped, he opened his eyes, and they were wet with tears. He signed to his father. It's like colors, but in my bones. Alejandro's carefully maintained composure cracked. He pulled Luca into his arms, burying his face in his son's hair. Dr. Patel quietly excused herself, giving them privacy. Mia started to follow, but Alejandro's voice stopped her. Don't. He looked up, his eyes red. You should be here for this. Luca pulled back and signed to both of them. Can we find more? More of the singing wood? Alejandro and Mia exchanged glances. The same thought passed between them, unspoken but clear. Maybe. Alessandro signed slowly. Would you like that? Luca nodded eagerly, the most animated Mia had ever seen him. As they left the lab, Alejandro's phone buzzed again. This time, when he read the message, all warmth drained from his face. What is it? Mia asked. Marco's contact in Italy. Someone's been asking questions about Castellamare, about the resonance trees. He looked at her with cold calculation. Someone knew we'd come looking. Who? Alejandro's jaw tightened. The Morettas. They own the land where the grove used to be. The elevator doors opened, and Mia felt the weight of what they'd started settling over her like a shroud. They weren't just chasing a miracle anymore. They were walking into a trap. The social club on Mulberry Street looked like any other Italian restaurant from the outside. Red awning, checkered curtains, a fading sign that read Lombardy's Zest, 1952. But everyone in certain circles knew what happened in the back room after midnight. Vincent Moretti sat at a corner table, spinning an espresso cup between his fingers. He was younger than most men in his position, 38, ambitious and hungry for the power his older brother refused to share. Around him, smoke curled toward the ceiling while men in expensive suits discussed shipments, territories, and money in coded language. Your brother's getting soft, said Carlo, Vincent's closest associate, a man with scarred knuckles and dead eyes. That mistake with the Brooklyn docks cost us $500,000. Vincent didn't respond. He was watching Dr. Russo across the room, Alessandro Vitali's personal physician, the one who had treated Lucas since birth. The doctor was drunk, laughing too loud, talking too much. Miraculous. I'm telling you. Dr. Russo slurred to the men around him. 6 years of nothing, and suddenly the kid hears something. Vitali's got some nurse with a magic whistle or some. Vincent's attention sharpened. He stood smoothly and crossed the room. Dr. Russo, he said, sliding into the booth with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. That's quite a story. Tell me more about this miracle. The doctor's face paled as he recognized Vincent. I shouldn't have said anything. Patient confidentiality. Of course. Vincent signaled for more wine. But among friends, Surely the fact that Alessandro Vitali's deaf son can suddenly hear is remarkable. The alcohol had loosened the doctor's tongue too much to stop now. Not hear exactly, react to one specific frequency from some wooden whistle. This woman has. They took the boy to Vitali's private lab. The readings were unprecedented. A wooden whistle? Vincent repeated slowly. And this woman, she works for Alessandro? A nurse, single mother. Mia. Something. Chun, I think. Dr. Russo leaned in conspiratorially. Vitali's obsessed. Paid her $20,000 a month just to stay in his house with the whistle. He's investigating the wood. Sent people to Sicily. Vincent's mind raced. Alessandro Vitali investigating something in Sicily? Paying a fortune for a piece of wood? Acting desperate? Desperate men made mistakes. Sicily? Vincent said casually. Where exactly? Castellare. I heard someone mention, but I don't know more than that. I swear. Vincent patted the doctor's shoulder. So of course. Thank you for the pleasant conversation, doctor. Perhaps you should head home. You look tired. After the doctor stumbled out, Vincent returned to his table, where Carlo waited. Get me everything on Castellamare del Golfo. Land records, property ownership, everything. What are we looking for? Whatever Alessandro Vitali thinks is valuable enough to cure his son. Vincent's eyes gleamed. If he wants it, we take it first. If his son can hear because of some wood, imagine what we could do with it. Medical applications, military contracts. The Americans pay billions for new technology. You think it's real? Some magic whistle? I think Alessandro Vitali doesn't chase fairy tales. If he believes it's real, that's enough. Vincent pulled out his phone. And there's something else. His son being deaf was his weakness. Everyone knew it. A liability in our world. If Vitali found a way to fix that, he gained strength. We can't let that happen. Carlo nodded slowly. So we find this nurse, this Mia-chun. Not yet. First, we control the source. My idiot brother signed over land development rights in Castella. 3 years ago, there was some deal he made with the local government. I remember it specifically because he was griping nonstop about the volcanic soil and how difficult it was making construction. Vincent gave a cold smile. I bet that's exactly where Vitali is nosing around. You want to go to Sicily? I want eyes on the ground, people there right now. Find out what's so special about that specific area. And Carlo? Vincent's voice dropped to a near whisper. If there's any of that magical wood left, burn it. Burn every single piece of it before Vitali even gets close to it. And the woman, we keep eyes on her. She's the key to the whistle. When the time is right, we grab her. If Vitali wants to play around with miracles, then he's going to learn the hard way that they always come with a steep price. 3,000 miles away, Alessandro sat in his study, engrossed in Marco's latest report. His hands tightened into fists as he gripped the paper. They know, he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. Marco stood silently by the door, his arms crossed. Dr. Russo was spotted at Lombardi last night, completely hammered, flapping his gums about everything. Fool! Alessandro crumpled the report in his fist. How long before Vincent makes a move? He's already dispatched men to Sicily. Our contact spotted them yesterday in Castellamare, asking questions. Alessandro rose to his feet and walked over to the window. Through the glass, he could see Luca and Mia out in the garden. She was teaching his son how to feel vibrations through a drum, their hands moving together in perfect rhythm. Luca was actually laughing, something Alessandro heard so rarely that it physically ached in his chest. Double the security on the house, Alessandro ordered. And get the plane prepped. You're going to Sicily. He paused, then corrected himself. We're all going to Sicily. All of us. Alessandro turned away from the window, his expression grim. If the Morettas want that grove, they can try to take it from me in person. Boss. Marco began hesitantly. Taking the woman and your son into hostile territory. Staying here makes them sitting ducks. At least in Sicily, I control the playing field. Alessandro's voice hardened. And I need to see that grove with my own eyes. If there's more of that wood, If there's a chance, any chance, to help Luca permanently, I'm not letting Vincent Moretti burn it all to the ground out of sheer spite. Marco hesitated, clearly concerned. The woman Mia, she doesn't know what she's walking into, Alessandro replied. Then it's time she learned. He started toward the door. We leave tomorrow night. Pack for a week. And Marco, bring everyone we trust. This isn't going to be a friendly vacation. As Alessandro walked toward the garden to tell Mia about their sudden trip to Sicily, he didn't notice the black sedan parked 3 houses down the street, or the man inside with a telephoto lens, snapping photos of Mia and Luca through the fence. The photos were already being uploaded to Vincent Moretti's secure server. The trap was being carefully laid, and both sides were walking directly into it with their eyes wide open. The village of Castellamare del Golfo clung precariously to the Sicilian coast, like a stubborn barnacle. It was a place of sun-bleached stone and narrow, winding streets that carried the scent of sea salt and wild fennel. Mia hadn't been back since she was 7 years old, and even then, it was just a brief summer visit to her grandfather's sister before the old woman passed away. Now, standing in the cobblestone square, with Luca's hands securely in hers and Alessandro's security team fanned out around them like a small army, she felt like she had stepped into a half-forgotten memory that didn't quite belong to her. Your aunt lives where, exactly? Alessandro asked, his eyes fixed on a map displayed on his phone. Up the hill, Mia replied. The yellow house with the blue shutters. At least, that's what my grandfather always told me. She nervously shifted the backpack containing the whistle. She hadn't let it out of her sight for even a moment since they had boarded Alessandro's private jet. If she's even still alive, she'd be almost 90 years old now. Luca looked around, his eyes wide with wonder and excitement. The 8-year-old had been surprisingly adaptable to the sudden trip, especially after Alessandro had explained that there would be adventure and plenty of gelato. Now he was pointing at everything that caught his attention. The colorful fishing boats bobbing in the harbor, the ancient ruins of the medieval castle, the old men playing cards outside of a small cafe. Mom, he signed. Is this where great-grandpa was born? Somewhere near here, yes, Mia replied with a smile. They began to climb the steep, winding street, Marco and 2 other guards trailing close behind them. The locals watched them pass, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and suspicion, a look reserved for outsiders who clearly had too much money and too much purpose. Alessandro had made an attempt to dress down, trading his usual sharp suit for dark jeans and a simple linen shirt, but he still carried himself with an undeniable authority that marked him as someone dangerous and not to be trifled with. The yellow house stood at the very end of a narrow alleyway. Its blue shutters were faded and peeling, almost gray with age. Lush bougainvillea spilled over the walls like vibrant purple waterfalls. Before Mia could even knock, the front door creaked open. The woman standing in the doorway was tiny and frail, her body bent with age, but her eyes were sharp as shards of broken glass. She studied Mia intently for a long moment, and then a smile slowly spread across her face, revealing that she was missing several teeth. Chuanwei's granddaughter, she said in Italian, her voice raspy but clear. You have his nose, Zia. Julia? Mia responded hesitantly in halting Italian. You remember me? I remember everything, the old woman replied. Her gaze shifted to Alessandro, then to the guards standing behind him, and her smile quickly faded. And I remember what men like you bring to quiet places like this, violence. We're not here for violence, Alessandro said smoothly in perfect Italian. We're here for information. Information about what my brother left behind. Julia hesitated for only a moment before stepping aside, gesturing for them to enter. But only you 3, she said firmly. The soldiers stay outside. This is a small house with old walls. They'll hear everything anyway. They stepped inside into a dimly lit living room that smelled strongly of olive oil and lavender. Religious icons covered nearly every surface. Images of Mary, various saints, and a crucifix that looked as if it had been carved from the same dark wood as Mia's whistle. Julia gestured for them to sit, then settled herself into a worn chair with a grunt of effort. Luca stayed close to Mia, signing to her quietly. She's very old. Julia's eyes tracked the movement of his hands. The boy is deaf? Yes, Alessandro said quietly. But not completely. Julia's gaze fixed on Mia's backpack. You brought it. My brother's whistle. Mia's breath caught in her throat. You know about it? I helped him carve it, Julia replied. Her weathered hands trembled slightly as she reached for a small wooden box on the side table. She opened it, revealing a collection of yellowed photographs. Wei was 15 years old when we discovered the grove. I was 12. Our father forbade us from going there, said it was cursed land where the trees sang to the dead. She handed Mia one of the photographs. It showed 2 teenagers standing before a grove of massive trees with twisted, black trunks and silver leaves. Even in the faded image, the trees looked otherworldly. The resonance trees, Julia continued. There were only 7 left by then. The church had ordered most of them destroyed centuries ago, claiming too many healers were using them for witchcraft. But our grandfather had secretly planted new ones in a hidden grove beyond the old volcanic caves. Alessandro leaned forward, his interest piqued. Are they still there? Julia's expression darkened. You're not the first to ask that question this week. The Morettas, Alessandro said flatly, stating it as a simple fact. Julia nodded grimly. 3 men. They came 4 days ago asking about the grove, about the trees. I told them nothing, but others talked. The old families remember the stories. The Morettas offered money for the location. She spat on her own floor in disgust. Blood money. Did anyone tell them? Alessandro pressed. Paolo Carboni, a drunk who desperately needed cash. He led them to the caves yesterday. Julia's eyes glinted with a hint of something dangerous. They haven't come back. Mia felt a sudden chill despite the warmth of the room. What do you mean? The grove protects itself. It always has. The trees grow where volcanic vents release gas from deep within the earth. Sulfur, carbon dioxide, all sorts of things. The air itself can kill you if you don't know the safe paths. Julia smiled grimly. Wei and I learned those paths as children. He carved 7 whistles before we left Sicily, 1 from each tree. I know of only 3 that survived. Yours, mine? She touched the crucifix on the wall. And 1 buried with our father. Can you take us there? Alessandro asked, his voice betraying his eagerness. To the grove. Why? Julia's voice turned sharp. So you can harvest the wood like everyone else who's tried? The trees are sacred. They grow from the bones of the earth. They're not meant to be cut down for profit. Not for profit, Alessandro said softly, his voice unusually gentle. For my son. He nodded to Mia, who carefully pulled out the whistle and blew it softly. The sound filled the small room, resonating with a power that was almost palpable. Luca's face transformed, his eyes closing as he swayed gently to the frequency that only he could fully perceive. Julia watched him, tears sliding down her weathered cheeks. The trees call to him, she whispered. They recognize something in his bones, something broken that they want to heal. She stood slowly, painfully, using the arms of the chair for support. I will take you, but you must understand that the grove is not safe. The Morettas may be dead in the caves, or they may be waiting. And the trees themselves? She paused, her expression grave. They don't give their gifts freely. They require something in return. What? Mia asked, her voice barely a whisper. Julia looked at her with ancient eyes that seemed to hold the weight of centuries. Truth. The trees sing to what's hidden inside you. If you cannot face what they reveal, they'll drive you mad. That's why the church feared them. Alessandro stood, his decision clearly made. When do we leave? Dawn, Julia replied. Before the heat makes the gases worse. She moved to an old wooden chest and pulled out a faded map. And pray your men are brave. The grove has claimed stronger souls than them. Outside, Marco's phone buzzed with an alert from their Sicily surveillance team. Moretti reinforcements arrived. 12 men, armed, heading toward the volcanic region. The race for the grove had begun, and nobody knew yet what the trees would demand as payment. They left before sunrise, when the Sicilian sky was still a bruised purple and the village slept. Giulia led them in a battered Fiat up a winding mountain road that gradually turned to dirt, then to nothing at all. Alessandro had insisted that Luca stay behind with 2 guards at a secure hotel, and for once, Mia hadn't argued. The volcanic caves appeared like gaping wounds in the hillside, dark openings exhaling cool air that smelled of sulfur and ancient earth. Giulia moved with surprising agility for her age, a walking stick in one hand and a flashlight in the other. "Stay close," she warned. "Step only where I step. The safe path is narrow." Marco and 4 other guards followed, their hands never far from their weapons. Alessandro walked beside Mia with Luca between them. The boy's eyes were wide but unafraid, his hand gripping the whistle Giulia had given him from her own collection, a twin to Mia's, carved with the same swirling patterns. The cave swallowed them whole. Inside, the darkness was absolute, except for the weak beams of their flashlights cutting through the black. Water dripped somewhere distant, echoing eerily. The air grew warmer, heavy with minerals and something else, something almost palpable. A low vibration that Mia felt in her chest before she even heard it. "The trees," Giulia said, her voice hushed with reverence. "They're singing. They know we're coming." 20 minutes of careful walking through narrow passages brought them to a cavern so large that their lights couldn't even find the ceiling. And there, impossibly, grew the resonance trees. 7 massive trunks, black as obsidian, with silver leaves that seemed to generate their own faint light. Their roots disappeared into cracks in the stone floor, where volcanic heat shimmered the air. The trees moved even though there was no wind, their branches swaying to a rhythm that had nothing to do with nature. Luca gasped, actually made a sound, the first Mia had ever heard from him. He pulled away from them and ran toward the nearest tree, his hands outstretched. "Luca, wait!" Alessandro lunged after him, but it was too late. The boy pressed his palms against the black bark and went completely still. His eyes rolled back in his head, showing only the whites. "Luca!" Mia screamed, running forward, her heart pounding in her chest. But then Luca smiled, a slow, serene smile that transformed his entire face. His hands began to move against the tree trunk, feeling patterns invisible to everyone else. He turned to his father and signed with trembling fingers. "They're talking. All of them. I can hear everything." Alessandro's face went pale. "What are they saying?" Before Luca could answer, Marco shouted from the cave entrance. "Contact! We've got contact!" A gunshot cracked through the cavern like a thunderclap. Marco dove behind a rock formation as bullets sparked off the stone. Mia grabbed Luca, pulling him behind one of the massive tree trunks. Alessandro drew a pistol from beneath his jacket. Of course, he was armed. He returned fire toward the cave mouth, his movements precise and deadly. "Vitali!" Vincent Moretti's voice echoed through the cavern. "You're so predictable. Did you really think I'd let you have this?" "You followed us," Alessandro called back, keeping Luca and Mia safely behind him. "Your aunt talked easier than she pretended." Vincent's silhouette appeared at the cave entrance, backlit by the early morning light. Paolo Carboni wasn't the only one who knew the path. You just needed the right motivation. Giulia spat on the ground. "I told them nothing." "No, but your neighbor did. After we convinced her you'd be safer if we protected you." Vincent's laugh was cold and devoid of any humor. "Now step away from the trees, Alessandro. This is bigger than your deaf son. These trees are worth millions. Medical research, military applications." "You're thinking too small," Alessandro said, his voice dangerous. "These trees aren't leaving this cave. Then neither are you." More gunfire erupted, filling the cavern with the deafening sounds of explosions and ricocheting bullets. Marco and the guards returned fire, but they were pinned down. Vincent had brought at least 10 men, positioned at both cave entrances. Mia's heart hammered against her ribs as bullets whizzed overhead, striking the trees with sounds like bells ringing. That's when Luca did something impossible. He pulled the whistle from his pocket, stood up despite Mia's desperate attempts to pull him down, and brought it to his lips. "Luca, no." Alessandro reached for him, but the boy blew with all his strength. The sound that emerged wasn't just a whistle. It was every whistle, every tree, every frequency, all at once. The cavern itself seemed to scream in protest. The silver leaves on all 7 trees began vibrating so fast that they blurred into shimmering halos. The volcanic vents beneath them released sudden bursts of gas that rolled across the floor like a thick fog. Vincent's men started choking, stumbling backward, their eyes wide with panic. The tree's vibrations intensified, resonating with something deep within the earth. Stalactites began falling from the ceiling, crashing down near the cave entrances. "Fall back!" Vincent shouted, his voice panicked. "Fall back!" But the cave wasn't done yet. The ground trembled violently. One of the volcanic vents near the entrance erupted with superheated steam, cutting off Vincent's main escape route. His men scattered in chaos, some retreating deeper into other tunnels, others trying desperately to climb over the fallen rocks. In the midst of the pandemonium, Marco grabbed Giulia and pulled her to safety behind Alessandro's position. The old woman was laughing and crying at the same time, her face illuminated by the eerie glow of the trees. "The trees remember," she gasped. "They remember Way. They remember us. They recognize the boy." The vibrations stopped as suddenly as they had started. Luca lowered the whistle, swaying on his feet. Alessandro caught him before he fell. "Is he?" Mia started, barely able to breathe, just exhausted. Alessandro reassured her, his gaze fixed on the cave entrance, where Vincent's retreat had left 3 men unconscious from the gas. The others had fled, disappearing into the network of tunnels. "We need to move now before they regroup." "Wait," Giulia said, hobbling to the nearest tree. She pulled a small saw from her pack, an ancient tool clearly made for this specific purpose. "If we leave now, they'll come back. They'll destroy everything." "What are you doing?" Mia asked, confused. "Taking what we need. The trees offer. See?" Giulia pointed to the spot where Luca's whistle had touched the bark. A branch had already begun to crack naturally, offering itself freely. "They know why we're here, but we must be fast." Marco kept watch while Giulia carefully harvested 3 branches from different trees, each separating cleanly as though the trees were actively helping her. She wrapped them in cloth with reverent hands. "This is enough," she said. "Enough to help the boy, maybe others. But we leave the trees standing. They must survive." An explosion echoed from somewhere deep within the tunnel network, the sound of Vincent's men desperately trying to blast their way back through the collapsed entrance. "Time's up," Marco said, his voice urgent. "Boss, there's a second exit. Narrow, but we can make it." They ran through the maze of passages, Giulia navigating by memory alone, the old woman moving faster than seemed humanly possible. Behind them, shouts and sporadic gunfire echoed, but the distance made them seem abstract and unreal. They emerged on the far side of the mountain just as the sun broke over the horizon, painting the Mediterranean Sea in vibrant shades of gold and crimson. Their cars were a mile away, hidden in a secluded olive grove. Luca stirred in his father's arms, sighing weakly. The trees said, "Thank you for listening." Alessandro's voice was rough with emotion. "What else did they say?" Luca's expression turned serious, his eyes filled with a wisdom beyond his years. "That mom needs to hear them too, that she's carrying something broken that they can fix." Mia's blood ran cold. She thought of her grandfather, of the secrets he had never revealed, of the whistle she had carried without truly understanding its power. "What does that mean?" she whispered, her voice trembling. But Giulia was already looking at her with knowing, sad eyes. "It means," the old woman said gently, "that your grandfather wasn't just a wood carver, and that your family's connection to these trees goes deeper than you know." Behind them, the mountain rumbled. Whether from Vincent's explosives or from the trees' anger, no one could say for sure. They had the wood, but the real revelations were only just beginning. The safe house sat perched on a cliff overlooking the Tyrrhenian Sea, isolated enough that the only sounds were the crashing waves and the cries of the seagulls. Alessandro had owned it for years, a place to disappear to when the world became too dangerous. Now, with Vincent Moretti's men scouring Sicily for them, it was the only sanctuary they had left. Luca had fallen into a deep, exhausted sleep the moment they arrived, drained from whatever the trees had taken from him. Julia tended to him, humming old Sicilian songs while she kept watch over him. Marco and the guards patrolled the perimeter, their weapons at the ready, ever vigilant. That left Alessandro and Mia alone on the terrace, as the sunset painted the sky in breathtaking shades of blood orange and violet. "Your son said something in the cave," Alessandro began, his voice quiet and measured. "About you carrying something broken." Mia's hands tightened on the terrace railing. The Mediterranean Sea stretched out before them, vast and indifferent, its surface shimmering in the fading light. "I don't know what he meant." "Yes, you do." Alessandro turned to face her, his expression unreadable. For once, his carefully maintained mask had slipped, revealing the weariness and the vulnerability that he usually kept hidden. "I've spent 3 days watching you with my son. The way you flinch when people raise their voices, how you instinctively check the exits in every room. You're running from something, Mia, just like I've been running from what happened to Luca." "That's different," Mia protested weakly. "You lost your wife." "I killed my wife." The words came out flat and brutal, stripped of all emotion. "That's the truth I've never said out loud. The doctors gave me a choice during the delivery. Her heart was failing. They could save her or the baby, but not both." His voice cracked with the suppressed pain of years. "I chose Luca. I chose to let her die." Mia's breath caught in her throat. "Alessandro," she begged me, Mia. With her last conscious words, she begged me to save her. And I looked at the monitor showing my son's heartbeat, and I said no. He turned back to the sea, his shoulders slumped with the weight of his guilt. "When they told me he was deaf, I thought it was punishment, God's way of showing me that I'd made the wrong choice, that I'd traded a full life for a broken one." "Luca's not broken," Mia said fiercely, her voice filled with conviction. "I know that now, but for 6 years, every time I looked at him, I saw my failure, not a son, but a constant reminder of what I destroyed to bring him into the world." Alessandro's hands clenched into tight fists. "I funded that hospital wing, hoping it would somehow balance the scales. I hired the best specialists, thinking I could fix what I'd broken, but nothing worked, nothing reached him until you." Alessandro looked at her, his gaze intense. "You see him as a person, not as a problem to be solved. You don't flinch from his silence or treat it as a disability. You just see him the way his mother would have." Tears burned in Mia's eyes. "She would have been better than me, maybe, but she's gone, and you're here, and my son trusts you more than he's ever trusted anyone except me. Maybe even more." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "So I need to know what you're running from, Mia. Because whatever happens next with the Morettis, with these trees, I need to know that you're with us completely, no more secrets." The words tumbled out before she could stop them, pulled from her by the raw honesty in his confession. "My grandfather didn't just leave Sicily, he fled." Mia's voice shook with the force of her emotions. "I found letters after he died. He was supposed to marry a girl from Castellamare, an arranged marriage to unite families. But he loved someone else, a woman from the Moretti family." Alessandro went very still, his expression hardening. "When he refused the marriage, they came after him, beat him so badly that he nearly died. The woman he loved, Bianca Moretti, she helped him escape, got him on a boat to America, but her family found out." Mia's tears spilled over, streaming down her face. "They killed her, made it look like an accident, but everyone knew. My grandfather spent his whole life carrying that guilt. He carved those whistles from the resonance trees because he believed that if he could make something beautiful from that cursed place, maybe her death would mean something." "The Morettis?" Alessandro breathed, his voice barely audible. "That's why Vincent is so obsessed with the Grove. It's not just about money or power. It's revenge." Mia nodded, her voice choked with tears. "Generational revenge against my family. When Vincent's men started asking about the trees, someone must have remembered the old story, realized who I was. And now you're with me," Alessandro said, his voice grim. Alessandro Vitali, the Moretti's biggest rival. Alessandro's laugh was bitter and humorless. We've painted targets on both our backs. They stood in silence as the sun finally sank below the horizon, plunging the terrace into a deep blue twilight. I should leave, Mia said finally, her voice small and hesitant. Take Luca and disappear. It's what my grandfather did. Is that what you want? Alessandro asked, his gaze searching her face. I want my son safe. I want Luca to have a chance at a normal life. Her voice broke, overcome by emotion. I want to stop running. I'm so tired of running. Alessandro moved closer, and for the first time since she had met him, he reached out and took her hand. His touch was warm, solid, and undeniably real. Then stay, he said, his voice filled with a quiet intensity. Help me fight. The wood from the grove, Dr. Patel thinks she can synthesize the frequency, create a device that helps Luca hear permanently. But it will take time, and the Morettis won't stop coming. Why do you care if I stay? Mia asked, her voice filled with doubt. You could protect Luca without me. Because my son needs you. Alessandro's jaw tightened, his gaze intense. And because I've spent 6 years blaming myself, closing myself off, building walls so high that no one could reach me. Then you walked into that hospital with a whistle and tore them all down. You made me remember what it feels like to hope. Mia looked up at him, at this dangerous man with the surprisingly gentle hands and the haunted eyes, and realized with a shock that she was falling. Had been falling since the moment she saw him hold his son in that cave, protecting him with his own body. The trees, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Luca said they wanted to heal something broken in me. Maybe this is what they meant, learning to stay instead of run. Or maybe, Alessandro said softly, his voice full of tenderness. They knew that I needed healing too, and they sent you to do it. Inside the house, Luca called out, not with his voice, but by tapping on the window in the rhythm that Mia had taught him. Their signal for come back. Alessandro and Mia turned together to see the boy signing through the glass, his expression pleading. Stay, both of you. Please stay. And in that moment, overlooking the sea that had both separated and connected their families for generations, they made a silent promise to each other. They would stop running. They would fight. And whatever the Morettis brought, they would face it together, side by side. The only question was whether that would be enough. 3 weeks later, New York felt like a different world. The morning sun sliced through the windows of Alessandro's penthouse, its rays illuminating the laboratory equipment that had transformed his formal dining room into a scene straight out of a science fiction movie. Dr. Patel, flanked by 2 acoustic engineers, was immersed in her work, surrounded by computers that were analyzing the resonance wood's frequency patterns. The branches Julia had gifted them sat in a sealed container, their dark grain appearing to throb with an inner light. We're getting close, dear, Patel announced, adjusting her glasses as she scrutinized the waveform displayed on her screen. The frequency oscillates in a pattern that mirrors neural timing. It's more than just sound. It's a language the nervous system instinctively understands. Alessandro watched from the doorway with Mia standing beside him. Over the past few weeks, they had developed a comfortable partnership. Strategy meetings seamlessly transitioned into late-night conversations. They shared meals with the boys, and there were moments when their hands would brush, and neither would pull away. How close are we? Alessandro asked. We can begin the first treatment today. Dr. Patel's expression turned somber. But Alessandro, this isn't a cure. It's more akin to tuning. We'll be using modified hearing aids that constantly emit the resonance frequency, training Luca's auditory cortex to process normal sound. Could take months, perhaps even years, but it will be effective. The simulations are promising. His brain is already responding to the whistles. This simply amplifies and refines that connection. She held up a small device, no larger than a standard hearing aid. We've embedded microscopic shavings of the resonance wood within the circuitry. This should maintain the frequency indefinitely. Mia squeezed Alessandro's hand. Let's tell him. They found Luca in the courtyard with Danny, both boys absorbed in a game of soccer. In recent weeks, they had become inseparable, Danny teaching Luca the games that hearing kids played, and Luca teaching Danny to perceive the world through his other senses. Luca, Alessandro signed. Dr. Patel is ready. The boy's face lit up with a mixture of hope and fear. He signed back, will it hurt? No, Piccolo. You'll simply wear these. Mia showed him the modified hearing aids. Like glasses, but for your ears. Luca nodded slowly, then glanced at Danny, who gave him a double thumbs up. The procedure itself took less than an hour. Fitting the devices, calibrating the frequency, and making minute adjustments based on Luca's neural feedback. When Dr. Patel finally activated them, everyone held their breath. Luca's eyes widened. His hands flew to the devices, touching them cautiously. Alessandro knelt before his son. Luca, can you? I hear you, Luca whispered, his voice raspy from disuse, but undeniably clear. Papa, I hear you. Alessandro's composure crumbled. He enveloped Luca in a hug, his shoulders shaking with the release of 6 years of grief, guilt, and relief. Say it again. Please say it again. I hear you, Papa. I hear you. Mia turned away, tears streaming down her face. Danny hugged her around the waist, crying as well, though he didn't fully grasp the reason. Dr. Patel quietly documented everything, her own eyes glistening behind her glasses. That afternoon, as Luca explored the newfound world of sound, laughing at Danny's jokes, listening to music, and inquiring about every noise, Alessandro's phone rang. It was Marco. Boss, we've got movement. The NYPD just raided 3 Moretti holdings. Vincent's been arrested. Alessandro's eyebrows shot up. On what charges? Illegal land acquisition in Sicily, among other things. It seems someone sent the authorities detailed documentation of property fraud, environmental violations, and connections to the men who perished in the volcanic caves. Marco paused. Anonymous source. Very thorough. Alessandro glanced at Mia, who was innocently observing the boys at play. She had been spending considerable time on her laptop for the past 2 weeks, claiming she was organizing family history. How thorough is very thorough? Alessandro asked. Thorough enough that the Italian government is reclaiming the land around the grove, designating it as a protected archaeological site. No development allowed. Amusement laced Marco's voice. Whoever compiled this file knew precisely what evidence would hurt the Morettis the most. Interesting, Alessandro said blandly. Keep me updated. He walked over to Mia as she stood watching their sons. You wouldn't happen to know anything about these anonymous tips to the authorities, would you? Mia's smile was guileless. Me? I'm just a nurse. A nurse who just so happens to possess extensive documentation of her grandfather's letters. Letters that detail the Moretti's illegal activities in Castellamare dating back decades. My grandfather was meticulous in his correspondence. Mia batted her eyelashes innocently. It seemed a shame to let all that information go to waste. Alessandro laughed, a genuine laugh, the first in years. You're terrifying, you know that? I learned from the best. She turned to face him. Besides, you said we fight together. I simply chose a different weapon. Remind me to never underestimate you. Too late for that. As evening descended, they gathered in the courtyard. Alessandro, Mia, Luca, Danny, and the household staff who had become like family over the past weeks. Marco produced wine and sparkling cider. Someone put on some music. Luca heard his first song. He seized his father's hand, then Mia's, pulling them together. Dance, he said, the word still clumsy but heartfelt. The trees said families should dance. The trees said that? Alessandro asked, amused. They show me things. In dreams. Luca's expression turned unusually solemn. They said Mama would be happy that you finally stopped being sad. Alessandro's throat tightened. He looked at Mia, this fierce single mother who had waltzed into his life with a wooden whistle and demolished every wall he had erected. Dance with me? He asked softly. Mia took his hand. Only if you promise not to step on my feet. No promises. They swayed to the music while the boys played, and Marco pretended not to notice. The city stretched out around them, a place of danger, complexity, and threats that would never vanish entirely. But here, in this moment, they had something far more powerful than anything in Alessandro's arsenal. They had family found and forged and fought for. Luca's laughter rang out, the sound Alessandro had waited 6 long years to hear, as Danny whispered something ridiculous in his ear. The resonance devices glinted in the fading light, still emitting their improbable frequency, still connecting the boy to a world from which he had been excluded. "What are you thinking?" Mia asked, her voice soft against Alessandro's shoulder. "That my wife would have liked you, that you gave my son something I never could, the belief that being different doesn't equate to being broken." He paused. "You gave him that too. You just needed help seeing it. We make a good team. We do." Mia drew back to look at him. "So what happens now?" Alessandro glanced at Marco, who gave a subtle nod. The threat was not over. It never would be in his world. But it was managed, controlled. "Now," Alessandro said, pulling Mia closer, "we live, we protect what we've built. And we teach our sons that family isn't about blood or hearing or perfection. It's about choosing to stay when running would be the easier option." "Your grandfather would have approved," Mia whispered. "Yours too, I think." Above them, the first stars began to appear in the New York sky. Somewhere in Sicily, the resonance trees still sang in their volcanic grove, now shielded by laws and secrets. And in a small yellow house with blue shutters, Julia raised a glass of wine to the ghosts and whispered her thanks. The whistle had fulfilled its purpose. But the true magic, the kind that healed shattered hearts and fashioned families from strangers, that was entirely human. That was all them, and it was only just beginning.